Hey guys, taking a with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be comparing the new iPhone 14 Pro with the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Now, the iPhone 11 Pro Max here came out back in 2019, so it's a 3-year-old phone, but we're going to do the comparison if you're thinking of upgrading it or just want to know the difference between it and if the upgrade is worth it or not. We'll let you guys know towards the end of the video after we discuss the differences that are going to make these two phones apart. Now, this comparison might not be a one-to-one comparison considering the 11 Pro Max is the max version of it and there is a max version of the 14 Pro, but we want to give you this comparison just so you can still kind of see here that what the difference might be if you're thinking of downsizing but then upgrading to the new 14 Pro here. So as you can see here, by holding it side by side here, there is a big difference in the terms of size of the phone. You have a 6.1 inch display here, which is the Super Retina XDR display versus the 6.5 Super Retina XDR display as well. So 0.4 inch bigger body phone here for the Pro Max because it is the bigger size. Now if you get the 14 Pro Max, that has a 6.7 inch, so it's actually bigger than the 11 Pro Max size wise. But holding it side by side, as you can see here, a lot has changed here, of course, the size wise, and then the top notch as well. Here you can see the new dynamic island on the 14 Pro versus the top notch that's available on the 11 or Pro Max here. And as you can see here, both of the phones again has other differences in terms of the actual display. Here you have 120 hertz refresh rate versus 60 on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Also along with it on the iPhone 14 Pro, here is for the very first time on the Pro and the Pro Max lineup. Here now you have this always on feature, which you can see here. Right here is the enable of it. If we close the phone, close both of the phones, actually you'll see here the always on being activated on the 14 Pro here. Now let's move on to the next thing, which is this physical differences in terms of body. Here holding it side by side here, you'll notice of course the color differences. The iPhone 14 Pro now again features a new color, which is the deep purple or the purple color, where the iPhone 11 Pro Max here, again, both of the phones do come in the base silver gold, space black, or the midnight edition of it. But on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, the new color is what's shown right here in the box, which is that color, which is known as the midnight green, as you will for the phone. So that's kind of the color difference. Of course, other thing you notice here, both of the phones have 3 triple cameras here, but you notice here if we hold them side by side, the difference in terms of how much bump on the 14 Pro the camera has gotten. And this is because there's been improvements to the camera. Of course, you have a now updated 48 megapixel camera, which we'll discuss what those features allow you to do versus just those 3 triple 12 megapixel camera here. And that's kind of the look of the body here. The other thing you'll notice here, the bezel, again redesigned here, going on the iPhone 14 Pro is the flat bezel versus of course on the iPhone 11 Pro Max is that rounded bezel. Now there's been different opinion from people saying they like the flat, some people like the round. Again, it's personal preference, but one thing to mention. The other thing we want to mention is this new update it on the iPhone 11 Pro is that there is no longer a physical SIM. So as you can see here, that hole right here is a physical SIM where you can insert a SIM card. So if you're going out of the country, you can swap out the SIM easily. But that's not the case on the iPhone 14 Pro now. There is no longer a SIM on the US model here. As you can see here, we no longer have a SIM card to insert. You have to use what's known as eSIM to activate it. The one upside to that is that 5G is available on the 14 Pro here, which 5G wasn't quite new to 14 Pro, but it is a feature starting on the iPhone 12 and above. So the iPhone 11 Pro Max did not get that update for it. So that's kind of physically the difference between both of these two phones. If you're looking at it, other hardware differences is on the iPhone 14 Pro has built-in sensors to detect if you're in a crash, so it can call emergency services in incidents or in accidents or crash, which again is a life-saving thing. And that's kind of the upgrade you're getting. Now let's move on to the next thing, which is the battery life. So what kind of battery life can you expect from both of these two phones? Surprisingly, when it comes to battery life, the iPhone 14 Pro Max does have a bigger size battery. However, that doesn't mean that it has it does that does mean that it has what's known as a video playback. So when it comes to video playback, the iPhone 14 Pro here actually gets 23 hours of video playback versus 20 hours of video playback on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and that just is due to the update in technology in terms of battery efficiency that has caused it. But when it comes to real life, I would think the iPhone 11 Pro Max here again has a great battery, but just slightly lower than the iPhone 14 Pro here. Of course, the other thing we want to mention on the phone is the chip design set of it. So of course there's been updates to the chip itself here. The iPhone 11 Pro Max here has again the chip that was designed about 3 years back, which is the A13 Bionic chip with 4 gigs of RAM, versus the iPhone 14 Pro again upgraded to A16 with 6 gigs of RAM. Again, a big update in terms of it for the phone here, and that kind of when we do some bench testing, we see that improvement in speed and ability to do a lot more with the iPhone 14 Pro again versus the iPhone 11 Pro Max here. Now, the other thing we want to mention about hardware is both of the phones are water resistant. However, slightly different IP rating here. So on the iPhone 11 Pro Max here, the IP rating you get for that one is around what's known as, for you to be able to take it, it's an IP68, which gives you about 4 meters, 30 up to 30 minutes versus 6 meters now up to 30 minutes. Again, does that really make a difference? Very negligible. If you're taking it for a dive, you want to be careful because both of the phones, if they have a crack on the back glass or the front, it will be water compromised. So it's a big risk, of course, for a phone that expensive to take out in the water. Now, when it comes to the phone, the other thing we do want to mention is, again, on terms of the camera itself. As you can see here, both of the phones, again, features really good cameras comparing. They have 3 cameras, but when it comes to things around going really deep into it, you can see here the zoom level here versus 15 versus 10x the zoom level. Things like portrait mode, again, both phones does have portrait mode, but when it comes to portrait mode, night mode is only available on the iPhone 14 Pro here. And then big update around the video space here. You'll see here both phones does record up to 4K 60 frames per second, but on the iPhone 14 Pro is a new feature known as action mode, which again allows you to kind of stabilize the phone's ability to record stable video when you're on the go. And other updates are the cinematic mode, which again isn't quite new to the iPhone 14 Pro, but it is a feature that the iPhone 11 doesn't have here. So those are some slight improvement. Again, remember the iPhone 14 Pro does feature that 48 megapixel main camera, which kind of allows the phone to be much more upgraded versus the older phones here. Now let's move on to next thing, which is the software. So what kind of software update are you getting? Both of the phones now, the iPhone 14 Pro does come in iOS 16. The iPhone 11 Pro Max here does go upgraded to iOS 16, so you can actually go ahead and upgrade to iOS 16, which you did, and you can take advantage of some of the features again we've seen around changing the wallpapers and much more, which we discussed in another video. So when you start testing out the applications, the main popular application from music app to video streaming to social media apps, all of the apps between both of the phones work absolutely phenomenal, and that's kind of shows to when it comes to iPhone. They're usually pretty good when it comes to doing the basic stuff in terms of getting the basic things done, and we kind of see that the software here again stable across the board here. All the applications so far we tested, from gaming apps to basic apps, they all work like they're supposed to without really any issues here. And the thing about these two phones is when it comes to even shows, because of the resolution that you get on the both of the phones, again, phenomenal overall in terms of the software between these two phones. Of course, the iPhone 11 Pro Max might get 2 more years of major update, considering that it is a 3-year-old phone, and generally Apple supports the major update about 5 years or so. So let's talk about why you might consider the iPhone 14 11 Pro Max versus the iPhone 14. Well, it's a bigger size phone. Of course, that's obvious because it is the Pro model. But aside that, there's other kind of advantages on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and it comes down to, the resolution is slightly bigger. But you'll notice here the price you can get the 11 Pro Max, which is going to be almost 1/3 the price of paying for a 14 Pro here, and that's kind of the biggest update. And that's why we're going to leave the link in the description section if you guys want to check out eBay or Amazon, which can get this phone still for a great discounted price. So that's where the 11 Pro Max comes in. Again, it's a great phone. Again, comes with again a cheaper price tag. But when it comes to upgrading to the 11 and Pro Max to iPhone 14 Pro, you're getting a couple things. Your first thing is we mentioned the refresh rate goes up to 60 to 120 hertz refresh rate. You get 1800 bright max in it, so much power for the display, much brighter display versus around 796 nit on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And when it comes to benchmark testing we have done so far, we've seen up to close to 60% the speed in terms of some of the GPU and CPU testing, and that's thanks to the upgraded A16 Bionic chip with 6 gigs of RAM. Also, according to Apple, they have upgraded the Bluetooth technology to version 5.3 and of course Wi-Fi 6 that's available here. Now, it also does use it under the cover, this new type of faster memory known as LPDDR5 as well. So those are kind of the upgrades you're getting. So along with the upgrades in the camera, the battery, is it worth upgrading from the iPhone 11 Pro Max to the iPhone 14 Pro? It's definitely an upgrade considering it's a 3-year-old phone. But again, if you're not willing to pay the price or on budget conscious, the iPhone 11 Pro, again, running iOS 16 seems to get the job done. And a lot of people aren't upgrading just because yet they might not be keen to it. So it's a personal opinion if you want to upgrade or not. But honestly, both phones, again, holds up really well even in 2022. That's kind of our review for it. We want to hear from you guys if you guys use the iPhone 11 Pro Max to maybe upgrade it to the 14 lineup. What's your thought? Or if you have both of these phones, what have you guys noticed on these two phones? Make sure to leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.